Hi, my name is Deven Raja. I'm 39 years old this year, which is 2012, and I'm 175 centimeters in height. I work as a school teacher and I enjoy performing stand up comedies. And since I'm a school teacher, most of my jokes are based on my comical and humorous relationships with my students. So, for instance, there was this one particular day which was an exam day in school, and I was an invigilator for the exam. So, I arrived early to make sure that everything was done well and all that. And the exam commenced well. For the first 10 minutes, there was no problem at all. But after 10 minutes, I did notice that a particular Chinese student at the right hand side of the hall was actually peeking over his friend who was sitting in front of him. He was peeking over the shoulder to look at the answer sheet of his friend. So I walked over. I walked over to him, patted him on his shoulder, and asked him, "Boy, are you copying?" He looked at me, a scared look on his face. He looked at me and he uttered, "No, sir, I'm not copying. My name is peeking." I said, "Exactly. That's what you're doing. You're peeking over your friend to look at the answer sheet." He said, "No, sir, my name is peeking." My God, these guys are terrible. Where do they get these kind of ideas? Oh my God, I just I just allowed him to continue with his exam, and I went to the front of the hall, hoping that everything would be okay. But then after a certain amount of time, 5 minutes I guess, after 5 minutes, I noticed that the girl sitting in the middle row was actually tapping on a handphone. I mean, I know nowadays students are allowed to bring handphones to school, but bringing handphones and making use of it in the exam hall, that's just absurd, right? So I walked over. I walked over to her and I told her, "Okay, girl, you're not allowed to use a handphone in the exam hall. I mean, what are you doing actually?" And she said, "Well, sir, I'm actually calculating the answer." I said, "Hey, this is an English exam. It's not on mathematics. You don't have to calculate anything. There's nothing to calculate." "Well, sir, I was actually adding up the words to form a grammatically correct sentence." I said, "What? You were adding up the words to form a grammatically correct sentence? That's crazy. Are you mad? What are you doing? These people are crazy. I don't. This really drives me mad. I don't know what else to do now." So I just allowed her to carry on with the exam. I snatched the handphone from my hand and I walked to the front of the hall. Terrible people. So when I went to the hall, when I went to the front of the hall, I thought everything would be okay after that. But God, Kadavule, everything began to get worse. So as I was looking at the students, making sure everything was okay, there was this guy who was sitting right in front of me. He was with his hands crossed. He was looking at me and smiling. I wondered why. So I looked at my watch. Oh, there's another 10 minutes. So I announced to the class, "Okay, class, you have another 10 minutes to complete your exam. Good luck." Then I looked at the boy again. He was still in the same position with his arms crossed and smiling at me in a cheeky manner. So I started to wonder why. Something something must be wrong. So I walked over to him. I asked him, "Boy, have you finished your exam?" And he said, "Still in the same position." He smiled and said, "Oh, yes, sir. I have definitely finished my exam." So I wondered how come he's so confident and all that. So I looked at his answer sheet and I got a shock. His answer sheet was empty. So I asked him, "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean that you have finished your exam? Your answer sheet is empty. Do you know that you only have another 10 minutes to complete this paper? I don't think you can do it. You're definite to fail." And he remained calm with his arms crossed. He smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, sir. I will definitely not fail, because I will only fail if I write something on the paper. If I send in an empty sheet of paper, I will definitely not fail. There is no chance that I will fail." Pretty smart, eh? I got shocked with this answer. Where do these people get this kind of answers all? Ayyo, kadavale. I was going to go mad ready. So I quickly went to the front of the hall and I announced, "Okay, children, time's up. Please put down your pencils. Me and the other teachers will come and collect your answer sheets." So me, along with my other peers, my co-teachers, started collecting the answer sheets from the students, one by one. And in due time, I reached the student who was copying earlier, right? So I asked him in a stern voice, "You were copying earlier, weren't you?" He looked up at me, smiled, and said, "No, sir. My name has always been Peking." Exactly. Till we meet again. Ade, ade, ade.